All right. So this day in history, we're gonna run down the list here, and let's see what happened this day in history. Are you ready for it?
Yeah, I guess I'm as ready as I'm ever going to be. But welcome to the Trampled Underfoot podcast, by the way. But yeah,
That's
go
right.
for
All
it.
right. So March 26th, this day in history, we'll start off with in 1925, during the Prohibition era, local and federal officers destroyed equipment used to make liquor. Alcohol was created and it was dumped out as well. And participants in this illegal booze operations, they were put in jail. So this date in history, 1925, Prohibition. What do you think of that?
Prohibition. Well, that's just proof that the government cannot regulate morality. You know
Yeah.
that if you want it, you'll get it. You'll figure out a way.
Yep. And that was started, I believe. I don't have the actual, but that was I think it was a sweeping across the country to not ethics. What would you call that? I guess like moral
Yeah, it
fortitude
was
of the
a it
country.
was a it was a huge morality play. It had been people have been working on that for years. I mean, since back in the 1800s, and they finally got enough votes to get it through. And you know, nobody really believed in it. They would make high-profile busts, but it wasn't really enforced. It wasn't illegal to possess it. It wasn't illegal to drink it. It was illegal to manufacture it, with certain specific exceptions.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah,
but
it sounds it sound so. For us looking back, we know that it's part of the history, but
uh-huh.
it sounds that's sort of an area that I tend to lean towards, even though there might be consequences and destruction. I tend to lean towards the side of allowing folks to sort of navigate their own uncharted waters or charted waters.
Well, look at the destruction and violence and everything that was a result of it. I mean, that's when the mobs ruled.
That's
So
right.
you remember that video? You sent me a link to that video of Cuba
Yeah,
during that time. That was
that's
during Prohibition,
yeah.
and they made a huge deal of videoing of shooting footage of that bar and how crowded it was because people could go get drinks, but they
Oh,
could.
amazing.
But 89 miles to the north in Florida, they couldn't. So
Yeah, that's
you know,
right. 90 miles towards Key West. I mean, who can picture a Key West without liquor? I mean, it's just unheard of. People walk around the streets, and but the whole idea of we sort of nudge society as a whole anyhow by our own habits and what we deem there is an unsort of stated level of decorum socially that people sort of naturally move to and sort of segregate into groups. So you'll have people religiously in this. I mean, I think it should be an organic thing, barring the
uh,
hurting of other people. That's when the line, in my opinion, is
right.
crossed. You know.
I'm with you. I think folks can figure out their own morality, and to try to force yours on somebody else, I think is just as immoral as whatever you think they're doing that's immoral. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
Uh,
So we'll move on to the next one of
yeah,
this day in history.
sure.
And keeping with sort of the theme of freedom of making your own decisions and this and that, we have another one this day in history. 1999, Dr. Jack Kevorkian was
Oh
found
yeah.
guilty of second degree murder for giving a lethal injection to a terminally ill man. In actuality, it's been a few years now. Actually, it's incredible that it has, but back then, a program aired. I think they still have it called 60 Minutes,
Uh-huh.
and they aired the actual process that he had shared with them, and they
Yeah.
used that as evidence in his case.
Yeah.
And the dude, well, he euthanized a human being that wanted it done, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
but the laws were very, very specific at the time. The fella, the guy, could do that to himself. Depending upon what state you live in. I mean, there, believe it or not, there are laws against suicide in some states. But you know,
I find it
like
ironic though.
yeah, like that's a deterrent. Oh well, heck no, I don't want to get a ticket. Uh,
Yeah,
but there were no federal laws against it against him making all the hookups and doing all the stuff. There were laws, and there still are laws in most places against someone else, whether you're a doctor or not, to cause the death of another person
yeah.
is illegal, whether the person wants you to do it or not.
Well, it goes further than that. Let me read this little thing because I think you'll find it interesting. In reference to this, so um, so he was sentenced to serve a 10 to 25 year prison sentence
Right.
by a judge, and he was actually released in 2007 on the condition that he could not help anyone else, assisting them to die. And he does campaign for that kind of law change. And currently, this is the part that the only state that allows legalized doctor-assisted suicide for terminally ill people
Uh-huh.
is Oregon.
Yep. And it's not used very often. It's a huge, huge deal. In fact, there was a young lady with, I don't remember which disease she had, but she was incurable. And she was terminal, and she was getting worse every day. And she decided that she wanted to do that on her terms and put an end to her suffering, while she still felt good enough to where, while she felt that she was still lucid enough to make the decision and to alleviate anybody else's concerns that somebody was doing this to her against her will. In fact, she moved from another state to here to do it. It's not used very often, and when it is used, it's a big deal. It's a major deal because it's not something that's taken lightly.
It is a very strange sort of area that's part of life, but it's sort of because it's such the finality, the finality of it, and the assisting. It's something so out of in the scale of human sort of like thought. For most people, it's at this tail end, and it's an uncomfortable thing. And people, I can understand why, because it could also be used to kill people that don't want.
Exactly.
A million things can happen. So,
oh yeah. Oh, the laws are very strict on the process that has to be gone through in order to do it. And like I said, it's a humongous deal. It's not something that you just decide at 8 in the morning and you're done by noon. That doesn't happen.
Yeah.
It's a long process.
Couple of birthdays that occurred this day in history.
On a lighter note.
Well, it's just going to the other. That's good. We have two that I want to mention, and one of them is Diana Ross.
Baby, don't leave me. Yeah, you can't sing.
Oh, dude, but I like Diana Ross. You don't like Diana Ross?
Oh no, I'm proving that I can't sing. I like Diana Ross. Yeah.
We were almost going to enter into a discussion of why Diana Ross is awesome.
No. Diana Ross, yeah, I like. There aren't. I gotta say straight up front here, and I don't know why it is. There aren't too many female singers I actually like.
Mm-hmm.
But her, Aretha Franklin, Natalie Cole, and there's a couple others. I like them a lot.
The second one is Leonard Nimoy, born March 26, 1931. And by the way, Ross was born in 1944, and she was 44, and she was born in Detroit. And Leonard Nimoy was born in Boston. So yeah,
cool.
Yeah.
And this is all the day before my birthday. Cool.
Oh yeah.
That's
and soon after mine, right?
Yep, March 27th is my birthday. 58. Oh yeah. And then you're on the 30th, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm the 31st.
31st. That's right. Clapton was the 30th. You were the 31st. And
Yeah.
gee, sorry, Eloy, I got you confused with Clapton.
Oh, well, hey, dude, no problem whatsoever. Okay, so a couple of I do have another site with a couple of little tidbits here.
Okay.
But the essentials were sort of covered, but I did want to throw in a couple of little doozies.
Okay.
Um, Ludwig van Beethoven dies at age 56 in Vienna, Austria in 1827. So we're going back in time a little bit more significant, but I think it's a point worth mentioning that
Sure.
this would be the day of his passing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So moving up in time to 1966, Cher enters the U.S. charts with "Bang Bang, My Baby Shot Me Down," her first solo hit. Which
Oh,
do
wow.
you know that song though?
Yeah, but I haven't heard it in years. Wow, I forgot all about that too. That was 1966. Why was I thinking that was after she broke up with Sonny Bono?
I don't know, man.
I haven't heard that in a long time.
It was featured though in recently within like the past 10, 15, 20 years,
Yeah.
in the Quentin Tarantino trilogy or two-part. I forget if it was no, it was a two-parter, which was Kill Bill,
Uh-huh.
which I don't know if you saw or not.
Oh, I didn't. I'm
Okay.
a cultural I'm a cultural infidel, man. There are so many different movies that I have not seen. So, yeah, Cher did it in 1966. Here's one. Did you know that it was a cover?
I did not.
Nancy Sinatra did it first in
Oh,
66,
you know what though? Oh, she did it first that same year.
that same year.
I'm wondering now if the Quentin Tarantino "Bang Bang" song that he used in the Kill Bill
Uh-huh.
was the Nancy Sinatra one or the Cher one. I'm wondering which one. If anybody out there knows, let us know, because you can reach us in a multitude of places. We have a website, which is Trampled Underfoot Podcast.com. We have a section for you to leave comments. If you want to leave suggestions on what we should talk about, that's cool too. And you can catch up on our episodes. We have it plastered right there where you could just click the button, listen to your heart's content, or go to the Wayback Machine and check out our past episodes on that site. I think that's an accurate
That's an accurate description. That's the way to do it. Just let us know what's going on. But yeah, and I need to correct myself because I just looked it up. Nancy Sinatra did not do it originally. She covered it. Cher was the one who originally released it. We're talking like just a couple of months earlier, because it was written by Sonny Bono.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, was written by Sonny Bono. She recorded it. Nancy Sinatra loved it. She covered it, and it's been covered several times, up to and including Lady Gaga.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, here's another one, 1982. This one's also kind of a controversial situation, I think, in my mind, and I would say, generally. So in 1982, in Cambridge, the first test tube twins are born.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I don't know what that, in my mind, I've never really gone into but it sounds very like laboratory.
Well, it is. We now call it in vitro fertilization.
Okay.
But that's exactly what it is. Technically, there are no test tubes really involved. It's all petri dishes. But yeah, you know the deal.
Holy smokes! But there's a mother, right?
Oh yeah, they take eggs from the mother and sperm from the father, put them together, and implant the fertilized egg back in the mother.
Okay, so that's basically it's they.
in a nutshell. That's the layman's way of putting it. I'm sure there's a heck of a lot more to it than that.
Right. Right.
But
Yeah, it's sort of, so I think that that's, so it's a thing that's worth mentioning because
yeah,
it's on this date, and
uh,
for goodness sakes, right?
right.
So that covers this day in history. If you guys enjoy this on the podcast or here live, let us also know, leaving us a comment. We even have a Facebook page, Trampled Underfoot Podcast on
Boom.
Facebook, so you could let us know. But now we have a secondary bit that we do, and Mark has no idea
Uh-oh.
what is going to be mentioned here. If he enjoys it, we'll see, or doesn't enjoy it, we'll see what his reactions are.
You're batting about 50-50. About half of them, I know what you're talking about, and the other half, I'm like, huh?
Well, we've had some doozies in the past, though. We've had a few things, like, to me, the one that for some reason stands out, because it was, and I'm reading them off as well for the first time, is the Civil War ending and starting in one gentleman's residence
Yeah.
property. I thought that was quite an amazing thing, and you found it.
Yeah, that was too freaky for me. That was kind of weird. It started in his front yard and then ended in his parlor.
Yeah, I think that was the previous episode that we talked about that.
Yeah, it was a couple back. Yeah.
So this next bit is odd facts, and there's different categories. So I'll just name a few, and I'll hit you with odd facts about your body,
Uh-oh.
the human body.
Okay.
So some
hang
of
on,
these,
folks. It may be a bumpy ride.
it might be. Well, some of these you guys might know, and others you may not. And I think that Mark should know a good amount of these or have heard of them, but we'll find out. So, did you know that it's physically impossible for you to lick your elbow?
I've heard that, and I also know it to be false.
Oh, because of the contortionist people?
I have seen it done. I have seen it done.
Well, you're right. There's exceptions to the rule, right?
Uh-huh.
But you and I mean, you'd have to have a Gene Simmons length.
I'm not even going to attempt because, it's just not happening. And to be honest, I don't know where I've been.
So, like everybody's fingerprints, everybody's tongue, their print on the tongue is different.
Yeah.
Which, that's quite a reasonable assumption, I would say. Just without knowing it, it sounds quite reasonable.
It sounds plausible. It's like, okay, yeah, all right, fine. That sounds, yeah. Okay. Did you ever see a thing in school that they used to teach? And I mean, we're talking, maybe 4th, 5th grade. You ever see a tongue map?
No, well, maybe, but I just don't remember it outright.
That had probably been debunked by the time you got into school. They used to show, it was a picture and it had little areas of the tongue drawn on it and then labeled. You taste bitter over here, you taste sweet over here, you taste sour over there. And that always mystified me. Like, number one, how does the food know where to go? And number two, so you're telling me if I put like a lemon drop over here on the sweet area, I'm not going to taste anything? No, it just didn't make sense.
Yeah.
But it was one of those things that was in textbooks, and I was taught it in school for like I said, I don't remember 4th, 5th grade, something like that. And then I never heard about it again.
I have heard about that, and I don't know if I learned it through school or what, but I have heard about it. Depending on where you place the food, you'll have a saltier or sweeter taste. So I have heard of that before. I don't know if I learned it in school, though.
It was just one of those weird little things, and I don't know why I went there, but okay.
So a sneeze travels out your mouth at over 100 miles per hour.
That, for some reason, does not surprise me.
Okay.
I don't know. I would have thought it be a little bit quicker, but then again, okay, that makes sense.
Well, that initial burst, right? It's a choo, and it's like quite a burst. 100 miles per hour. That's pretty severe. So women, and I've heard this one before, blink nearly twice as often as men.
Especially when they're pretty cheesed off at you. The blink rate goes up. Unless it's mom, then the blink rate drops to 0. She will stare you down.
So, yeah. Here's
Make me
another
go
one.
over there.
Most, and this one I think you might know, most dust particles in your house are from,
I've heard dead skin.
and that's the, yep.
It's not the case.
No,
It's
well,
just
that's the answer.
it's just a bunch of grunge. You know, you know, yes, there is dead skin. That is part of the dust, but it's not the majority. I've heard that debunked as well, but I don't remember where. Most of it is just airborne dirt that blows in from outside.
So, here's a weird one.
Okay.
And I've heard something to this effect. I don't know about this extreme, but I'll ask you, and then I'll give you the answer. What, you know, if you get it right or wrong.
Okay.
What was the longest bout of hiccups, and how long did it last?
Man, there was, oh my God, this takes me back. There was a guy who came on the Johnny Carson show, and he was, oh my gosh, he was in his 80s, and he'd had hiccups constantly for I don't know how many years.
How could you sleep?
And it's funny because God bless the guy, but he was a wrinkled old man.
Yeah.
And just you just look at him, you felt sorry for him because he sat there and he just, you know, hick, you know, and trying to hold a conversation. It was like a word and a half, hick, and then a word and a half, you know. And he said something. God, I don't remember his answers, but he said that he was able to fall asleep. He didn't sleep well, but he could sleep. But the hardest part was trying to eat because he never knew when the next one was coming.
Mm-hmm. Wow, dude. Yeah. Well, so the longest one on record was, let me see, 69 years. Nearly 69 years. Dude, that is torture.
Yeah. Oh, man.
If you've ever had hiccups for the duration of the hiccups that it lasts, which could be like a minute, or if an extreme a couple of minutes, which I think is normal, kind of. It's quite annoying now, isn't it?
Oh, Lord, yes. But, you know, I've figured out a way. My grandfather on my father's side told me this. Oh, man, I was 17, 18 years old, and I had the hiccups. And he looked at me and he says, quick, try to hiccup. And I said, what? He said, quick, try to hiccup. Make yourself hiccup. And, you know, I hiccuped a couple times. He says, you're not trying. Try to force yourself to hiccup. Make yourself hiccup. And I really did. I tried, and they stopped.
You overrided the...
I'm like, what? You know, he says, you can't. It's physically impossible to make yourself hiccup. You can make the sound, but you cannot control that muscle. You can't make yourself hiccup. And when you try to force yourself to, it short circuits it. And I'm like, nah. And ever since then, maybe 6 hiccups and I'm done.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I'm fixing to be 58. So this has been working for me for decades. Try to force, don't just sit back and wait for the next one to come. Try to really concentrate, force yourself to hiccup, and you can't do it. But for some reason, it short circuits it.
Well, that's a great freaking tip, man.
It works for me. I mean, my wife says you're just a witch. We got to burn you, you know.
All right. So let's see what we got going here. I'm going to keep going down the list here. So this one's probably something that most folks know, but babies are born without kneecaps.
That I did know.
They appear okay. Well, they appear between the ages of 2 and 6.
Yep. Babies are born with more bones than adults have too. Because when they're born, some of the bones have not set, I guess you'd say, because it's cartilage that becomes bone. But like the skull, is not one bone, and it fuses together.
Right.
And every parent knows that babies have a little soft spot up there on the top of their head that you gotta, take care of. And but yeah, they have more bones in their body than an adult human does, because some of them have not yet fused together.
That's right. Yep.
But I knew they didn't have kneecaps, because it's like cartilage.
So
bone.
So here's one, going kind of back to the whole hiccuping thing in the generalized area. If you sneeze too hard, you can actually fracture a rib. If you try to suppress a sneeze, you can actually rupture a blood vessel in your head or neck and die. And if you keep your eyes open by force, they can actually pop out. Now, what do you think of that?
I never heard of the pop out thing, but I had heard that if you try to suppress a sneeze, you can rupture an eardrum. A sneeze or a sneeze, for those of you who can speak. I had heard that you could rupture an eardrum because of the pressure.
Right.
You got to let the pressure out of your mouth, otherwise it travels up the eustachian tubes to the inner ear, and then. And as a person who has had a ruptured eardrum, that is no fun. So yeah, let it out, man. Let it out.
So I had. This is kind of a weird thing, but within the thing, does the same thing apply to gas?
I have no clue.
Because I had a girlfriend, I was like, oh, I gotta go to the laboratory, but there was no laboratory. I had gas, and she says, well, you can't hold that in because that can rupture your intestine. And I was like, what?
I've never heard of that.
Well, she said that it's one of those sort of like, I was like, what? No. And she said, and then I said, okay, fine. I just ripped, let it go.
And she went, ew, and never dated you again.
but it was well, no, it got me to thinking that doesn't sound quite right. But
no, that don't. I think that's kind of like one of those don't swallow gum because you can't digest it, or don't go swimming an hour. You have to wait an hour to go swimming after you've eaten, or the weirdest one I ever heard. My grandmother on my mom's side, she was full of these little things. She didn't drink Pepsi or Coca-Cola because she was afraid it would stain the inside of her stomach. I had never heard that, and I thought to myself, well, even if it does, so?
Yeah.
Stain the inside of your stomach. Okay. Whatever, Grandma.
Well, it's there's a lot of things. We've touched upon a lot of those, right?
Yeah.
Like, we've been handed.
We did talk about the cramp after eating or what have you. But it's never happened. That's the thing. It's never happened, not once.
So our eyes are always the same size from birth, always the same size as we grow, even to adulthood.
They don't grow.
But they're always right. They're always the same size. But our nose and ears never stop growing. And that does significantly change our face, don't it?
I often wondered about that. You see old bald guys that have ears that look like the size of their hands.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, dang, man, you look like a Cadillac Eldorado with both doors open here. Were you born with that, or what's going on? But okay, so that makes sense now. Ears never stop growing. Well, I got headphones on, so I'm cool.
And the
nose.
Uh-huh. I mean, for goodness sakes, and another, it's not part of the thing, but like hair starts growing in the ears.
Oh yeah,
man. It's like,
oh yeah, all over the place.
We don't need that.
No, I mean that's why babies and little old men look like Yoda. Babies because they're small and wrinkly, and old men because they're old and they've got the spike
and wrinkly.
Out, and wrinkly. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and then the eyebrows. The eyebrows get real long, bushy things going. I don't know what the deal is.
So that'll take care of the body parts. Odd historical facts. So I'll give you the option. We'll do one more,
Okay.
and I'll give you the category, and you tell me. We can do odd historical facts. And by the way, I've not looked into these, so I'm just giving you fun facts about machinery and technology, cool facts about the English language, odd facts about food, strange facts about the United States.
Well, I kind of like the machinery and technology thing, but I'm also a fan of English language. I think a lot of that is fun too.
Okay,
So,
well you tell me.
well, wherever you want to go with it, I'm good with it.
Well, pick a number from 1 to 10.
Oh, 8.
Okay, you failed.
Okay.
But we never gave you the
Sorry, missed it by that much. It was 7. Now you get a copy of our home game.
Okay, we'll do machinery. We'll do a couple machinery and a couple of English. How's that? And then we'll
Okay.
wrap this portion of.
Okay.
Okay, so but
You never know. It may lead to a better conversation. Go for it.
yeah. So fun facts about machinery and technology. And
All right.
I'm just gonna go ahead and read this. Let's see.
Okay.
Okay, so the microwave was invented after a researcher walked by a radar tube and the chocolate bar in his pocket melted.
Yep.
I've heard that one.
And that was part of my first time in the Army. I was a radar technician
Oh wow.
on a artillery counterfire radar. And that was mentioned in training when it was developed, when it was invented, and this, that, and the other, and how it led to the microwave oven. Believe it or not, the world's, at the time, this was back in the early 80s, at the time, the world's biggest microwave oven was one used by Chrysler. They used it to soften the wood for the old Airstreams, the
Okay.
cars that had all the wood on them on the outside.
Hmm.
The old country, or not Country Squire, that was Ford, but the old Chrysler Airstreams.
Yeah,
And
it's just amazing.
They heated up and softened the wood to bend it with a microwave.
Which people still use to this day, actually.
Yeah.
Do you remember? Did you always have a microwave at home?
No, the first microwave, and in fact, my parents had that microwave. They got it. Oh boy, I got married in 1978, and they got it about 1979. So I had moved out. I never lived in the house with my parents when they had a microwave.
Oh wow.
And they had that puppy. Oh my gosh, I think they finally replaced it in, I want to say like 2005, 2006. It finally broke. It finally just didn't work anymore, and they replaced it.
So they had it for all that time.
Yeah.
That's amazing, dude.
Yeah. It was one of those old, it was made by Sears. It was a Kenmore.
It probably looked
It
wooden.
just lasted forever. Yeah, it had a wood, that wood grain stamped aluminum,
Yeah.
or sheet metal, whatever, with the walnut-looking vinyl on it,
Yeah.
and a black door with that little mesh and everything else, and a big handle. You had to hit the button and pull on the handle to get it open.
So growing up, to give you my story of it, we didn't have a microwave till like the 80s, maybe the early 80s. 80, 81, something like that.
Yeah.
I was a baby growing up, and never saw a microwave, nor even pondered its existence, because you know how it was back then.
Yeah.
It's not like we had access to all this information at once and this and that.
Right.
And so we would use the popcorn poppers that had that metal sort of handle that was like a tuning fork type handle, and it had the aluminum top, and it had like the aluminum basket.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
you put it
Jiffy
over
Pop.
Jiffy Pop, and you put it over the stove and shake it over the stove, and it would start popping, and that was our adventure in this and that. And so we did things like that, like, well, you know, the oven and the and then the microwave was introduced, and the TV dinners, for that matter. Growing up, I clearly remember prior to the that we would have TV dinners, as most families would. And by the way, I love them, the TV dinners, and you'd put them and see, because kids listening, or millennials, I don't know about Generation Xers later into the, maybe yes, but the microwave dinners, or the TV dinners, were wrapped in aluminum on the top, and the bottom tray was aluminum, and you'd pop it into the oven, and that's how you did your thing.
Yeah, they took about anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes to heat up. You peeled back the foil. It was a aluminum tray, and you had your, Salisbury steak with gravy over here, and your mashed potatoes over here, and your peas over here, and a little dessert in the middle, in the back, and these little compartments that kind of looked like a school lunch tray, but they were single-use thin tin foil. Then you had the tin foil top on it, and you peeled back the foil, and you left certain things covered, and you uncovered other things. And you put it in the oven at like 450 or something like that for about a half hour.
Yeah, I mean, but then, enter the microwave, and I don't think that you'll find, I mean, you might.
You still find them, but they're no longer in tin foil trays. They're all in paper or plastic or something like that. And so it's microwave safe.
Yeah.
But you still can get, and I still like them. Do you remember like the chicken pot pies or the beef pot pies?
Yeah.
That were in the tin foil tray, put in the oven and heated up.
I could eat one now.
And it came out hotter, believe it or not. The chicken pot pies were the only substance on earth hotter than a McDonald's hot apple pie. It would take 3 layers of skin off the roof of your mouth. You bring it out of the oven and let it sit for 20. You cook it for a half hour, then let it sit for cool off for 20 minutes.
Dude, one of my favorite is chicken pot pie, especially if it's creamy inside and not dried up, because a lot of people will dry it to the. I don't like that.
Now, you want a good chicken pot pie downtown. Forget about the Hungry Man or whatever. Put it in the oven type. If you live near a Marie Callender's restaurant, they make an excellent chicken pot pie. Oh my God.
Oh man.
All good. All real good.
So the microwave sort of sped up the whole, we're hungry, let's drop in and so that was a big thing. But prior to that, just for folks listening that want to remember, or because we're looking at 30 years back and more.
Oh, yeah. Well, like I said, it was about the same time, about 79 or 80, that my parents got a microwave, and I was grown and gone. So I never lived in that house. I never lived with my folks with a microwave. You reheated everything in the oven. We had this one pan for popping popcorn, and that's about all we ever used it on. But the lid, you put the lid on kind of a quarter turn out from straight, and it had these little locking lugs on it. And you put the oil and the popcorn in there, and you put the lid on it, and you spun it to where the handles lined up, and it locked that lid on top. And that was
like
our popcorn. Yeah, like a pressure cooker, very much like a pressure cooker. But that was our popcorn popping pan, because the lid stayed on it and it wouldn't fly off, And you sat there and you shook it over the stove, and then you shake it some more, shake all the seeds down so they got in the oil or whatever you popped it in. But yeah.
So here's a good one that I think is quite funny. 20, and by the way, we're doing fun facts about machinery and technology. So here's an interesting one. 23% of all photocopiers photocopy faults worldwide, when they have faults, are caused by people sitting on them and photocopying their butts.
That does not surprise me. They were not made to hold the weight of a human, and that glass is not very thick. Ouch. That's all I'm going to say. Ouch.
Oh my goodness, you don't want that to break.
That's when you find out who your friends really are, because when you got to have splinters picked out of that, and it's like, oh no, I like you, my friend, but we're just going to wait on the paramedics.
So here's one. The first fax machine was patented in 1843.
Yep.
And that's 33 years before Alexander Bell demonstrated his telephone itself.
Yep.
And that's a mind blower.
Yep. Yep. I didn't know it was that early. I thought the telephone came first, but I knew the fax machine was old.
I mean, that's just amazing.
Yeah.
Now, typewriter is the longest word that can be made using the keys on only one row
Yep.
of the keyboard.
The top row of the keyboard. That's the longest word you can make just by typing on the top row of the keyboard, the top alphabet row, letter row.
It's amazing, dude. Okay, so here's another shocking one.
Okay.
More than 50% of people in the world, have never made or received a telephone call. Is that
is so sad? That is so sad. It really is. And it's funny too, because my daughters and my grandkids are both of that, mindset. They don't want to talk to anybody. Just send me a text. Well, I'm old. I don't text. I call. But it's hilarious. I mean, I figure I got it right there in my hand. We can have a 30-minute texting session, or I can talk to you for 5 minutes and we're done. We can both get on with life. But it's funny, if I call any of them, they refuse to get off the ding dong phone. We're on the phone for like an hour, hour and a half.
Right. They're just not used to it.
Yeah, no, they're not used to it. So they got to tell you everything that's been going on and everything that's going to go on for the next 3 days. It's hilarious. It's like, I thought you didn't like to talk on the phone. Well, I don't. Well, we've been on for an hour and a half,
Well, there's a lot of, and we've touched upon these things before, but there's a lot of little things about newer generations and stuff, like not wanting to, and I'm curious for folks out there that listen to this when it comes out live, straight out of the podcast catcher, or right here, right now. And the question is there such a thing as kids nowadays not wanting to drive?
It is out here. I can't speak for other regions. I don't know. But it is the thing here in this valley. And again, I'm in a very small area, a little podunk town. But it's fashionable for the kids not to drive. They and I don't understand the logic of it. Well, why should I get a car and pay all that money? I can always get a ride. Yeah, from who? From somebody with a car, right?
That pays all that money.
Yeah, exactly. How about independence? How about independence? How about the ability to get up and go when you want to and not rely on other people? What about that one day you can't get a ride? What about that one day you're out with somebody and they have an accident and can't drive? Now what do you do?
Maybe they bicycle.
Yeah, well, my grandson bicycles a lot everywhere, and I'm like, well, good luck taking somebody out on a date.
Well, you could put like a little tow cart, like
that's really going to impress her, isn't it?
Well, if you make the little wagon like those old wagons and you put like a little cushion, I mean, I'm sure that's.
Oh yeah, you show up. Now I'm not female, so obviously I can't speak for any females, but I can. My first thought is you show up on your bike to pick me up for a date. Is your mama let you stay out that late? What are you, 12?
Well, the other option is the wagon and the horse and wagon, like the buggy, but of course you do have to spend money on purchasing a very expensive horse, not to mention the actual buggy. And then there's upkeep on the buggy, and you have to feed the horse and house the horse.
And then you got to clean up after the horse, and where's all that going to go?
Yeah, because nowadays, horses would drop down the street like any, and so you're going to have those little baggies with you, and it's not going to work, man.
Yeah, that's spoken like a true city kid, because there ain't nothing a horse can do that'll fit in a little baggie.
Well, I'm making what you know what I'm doing? Are you I'm being facetious,
Yeah.
So now, well, I guess that's as far as we can go with that one. So let's see.
But we do got to get back into teaching kids independence, and that's all there is to it. You got to be able to rely on yourself.
Well, and there's no place to, so here's the thing. So I can't speak for your area, but judging by the sit downs we've had and you mapping out the travel through your region, it it doesn't look like a place that you could skip along to the next locale in a timely manner without using an automobile.
Well, the West Coast is like that. We're very spread out. Now, there are exceptions, but generally speaking, um, we're pretty spread out as far as either the commute to work from home or just going to the store. I mean, it was even more so when we lived in the Nevada desert because, we've talked about it before. We were 12 miles from the nearest gas station and 16 miles to the nearest grocery store. Right now, I've got a grocery store 5 blocks away and a big shopping center 3.5 miles down the road. And I consider it a pain to go to that shopping center, and it's only 3 miles away, where I used to have to drive 12 or 16. So,
Well,
it's everything is relative.
so
But
in context, juxtaposed to your situation where you have a 3 mile jaunt to a shopping center.
Yeah.
In my situation here, I have it literally in about a mile. I have a in either direction. I have a supermarket.
Mhm.
It's a mile walk.
Yeah.
So you could walk a mile to and fro.
You could if you really wanted to, but that's another thing about folks out here. We don't do a heck of a lot of walking. We will if forced. And there are sometimes, and that's why malls are so big and so popular out here versus like a downtown shopping area. People don't want to drive to downtown, park their car somewhere, and walk from store to store. It's funny, they'll park at a mall, go inside the mall, and walk from store to store.
That's right.
But they won't go from this store on Main Street over to that store on Central Avenue. They don't want to do that. That's
like walk it. Yeah. Like walk from the outside sidewalk to the next area.
Right. Wait for the light, cross the street. They don't like to do that. But they'll walk, the mall here is about probably 3/4 of a mile long indoors. It's a big mall.
Yeah.
And they'll walk that all day long, but they don't want to walk 100 feet to the next storefront 2 stores over out on Main Street.
That's an interesting thing. Huh.
Yeah, it's all psychological. Now, if it's raining or snowing or something like that, okay, fine, I can see it. But, it's just kind of weird. So around here, like downtown Medford has died, because everything is moving out away. I mean, we've got a Walmart supercenter down at the south end of town, another one on the north end of town, out away from downtown. And people will drive out to one or the other, whichever's closest to them. And
right.
Same old story. Other businesses go where Walmart is because that's where the traffic is. So we have mom and pop shops closing up in downtown and moving out to Walmart because that's where the traffic is. We've got a lot of local little restaurants and burger stands and music stores and car parts places and stuff like that within walking distance of Walmart. It's not just the big national chains. Sure, there are 3 or 4 big national chains, but there's a lot of little locally owned places.
Yeah.
Around them because that's where the traffic is.
Well, we have a hardware store, 2 of them that we can boast of here in Sweetwater. Mm-hmm. Minding that we were a small city that is now exploded into a metropolis, right?
Yeah.
And these places are still alive and kicking. I don't know what their lease or rent is on their, storefronts and whatnot, but you can actually go to Home Depot and you have 100 times more different things, options, and this and that than these little stores. And I guess what I'm getting at is that I'll go to the store the hardware store locally here every once in a blue moon, but it's not like I go there as much as I go to Home Depot. And if that's any sort of indication of what people in the area do, I don't know how these people stay alive. I mean, they make they make keys.
Mhm.
They do little things like that, but I just don't see it, man.
Well, that's a good example. We have a hardware store here that's about, oh, probably a half mile away from our local Lowe's Home Improvement, and it's Hubbard's Hardware, and they used to be located in downtown. They were on the same corner. I mean, there's some old photographs of downtown Medford from, 1911, 1912, and Hubbard's was in that same spot. It was on the corner of Riverside and Main Street. They moved out close to Lowe's because that's where the traffic went. It left downtown.
Yeah.
And the store they have out there on the highway by Lowe's is, oh God, 30 times bigger than the store that they had there in downtown Medford. But I've always equated, you go to Lowe's or Home Depot to get the stuff you know they have.
Yeah.
But if I need that one nut for that one bolt, Lowe's probably doesn't have it, but I know Hubbard's does. And while I'm there, I'm going to look for the other stuff.
Yeah.
And you can get a lot of stuff at the national chains, but they're so big they can't carry everything. These guys focus on a few things. They have an electrical department, they have a plumbing department, and there's not a lot there because most of their livelihood is tools, hardware, and yard machines. You go to every Lowe's or Home Depot, you're going to get the same rebranded MTD lawnmower, whether it has a Troy-Bilt name on it or a Lawn Boy or whatever. But you go to Hubbard's and they've got 32 different brands in there. Some of them are the rebranded MTDs, but you've got Husqvarna, you've got Honda, you've got all kinds of stuff there. So they sell the stuff that the big box stores don't, and that's where they make their money. And there's always people in there. There's always folks in there.
Well, every time I go to the hardware store, the local one, there are always people in there. Not a lot.
Yeah.
But there's always people in there. It's just, the whole... One cool thing about the store, I don't know about your local hardware store, but they have the nails and the screws. You can actually grab a fist of them. They provide little brown bags. You put it, and they'll weigh them, and that's how we...
You buy by the pound, exactly. Because, you go down to the big box store, you got a 50-pound box or you got a package of 24. Maybe they'll have a container with the pound in them. And if they have the one you're looking for, you lucked out. But I can go into Hubbard's and I can buy wood screws by the pound.
Yep, which is great.
Exterior, drywall, whatever you want. They got big bins that rotate. These big anodized, or not anodized, these big galvanized steel bins with a big scoop, a big aluminum scoop, and you scoop them up and throw them in the bag and they weigh them and, off you go. But you can get what you want right now, usually.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. And then there's the other extreme of all this that we're talking about, which I guess would be the other extreme, where you can actually go on. See, that's the whole thing. You could go online and you can go to Amazon or whatever. Let's say Amazon, because it's like the big, like you mentioned, Walmart, and you can buy truckloads of frickin' screws, for example, but not limited to. I mean, just it's unlimited.
Yeah, and you can get a hold of things that you can't get locally, and I find that a lot. For instance, I was looking for a power strip that had individual switches that would turn on and off each outlet. And I looked everywhere I could think of to look around here, even electrical supply stores, and nobody had them. They had power strips galore, but they all had one switch that turned the whole power strip on or off. I want to be able to turn off individual outlets on that power strip.
Oh, you gotta show me that one, because that sounds cool.
I had to order it online. I couldn't find one locally.
Was it more expensive or less expensive than?
It's about the same. It was
Holy
it
cow.
was about the same, and free shipping. So, it was $12, something like that. It's okay, fine, pop, order it online. No store can carry everything.
No, that's
So
right.
it's just kind of getting in, digging around, and what have you. I mean, you and me being in the maker community, we see this a lot. Especially you get into some of the groups on Facebook or what have you, and people say, well, where do you guys order your wood from? Because all my Home Depot has is poplar, oak, and pine.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like a hardwood supplier,
Mm-hmm.
a lumber yard. Look up hardwoods and then your zip code or your area code
Yeah.
on Google, and you'd be surprised. I mean, I'm in a little bitty podunk town, you know, and this whole county, there's only 200,000 people in this whole county. And I drive past one hardwood supplier to get to another hardwood supplier within 6 miles of my house. They're out there. You just got to look for them.
So you can acquire exotics.
Oh, yeah. I can go down and buy Purple Heart right now. In fact, I get Purple Heart cheaper than I can get walnut because it comes off the ship either down San Francisco or up in Portland or Seattle.
Yeah.
And they just truck it right down. So I can get Purple Heart for $6 a board foot. Walnut cost me 10 to 12. So, and
I
I'm
think we're the
talking
same.
walnut from the east.
Yeah, I think we're the same here. In my case, as far as I've researched, I have to go for hardwoods to practically downtown Miami.
Yeah. And I mean, I can go there's one hardwood supplier that's right here close to me. They mainly handle the domestic woods. I can get maple, cherry, walnut, things like that there. They don't deal with exotics. They can order it for me, but they don't have them right there on hand. I go into town to the other place and they've got more than what I need. They've got stuff I've never heard of, you know. But if I want a piece of Cocobolo or a piece of Wenge or a piece of Paduke, I go down there to that one place and they've got it. So
Yeah.
I get anything like that here. So when folks say, well, there's no place like that around here, have you looked? Because I mean, I'm not in a major metropolis. We don't have an Apple store here.
Yeah, I think you have to go to the mall for Apple stores here. But I don't do Apple products, so
So we don't even have that. You either have to drive to Portland, 270 miles to the north, or Sacramento, 275 to the south.
jeez.
So, if you buy an Apple product here, you're just kind of hosed.
Well, here's some cool facts. I'm going to throw a couple of these and see what happens here. Some cool facts about the English language.
All right, I'm ready for it.
So, and you tell me if you know any of these and any sort of thoughts that come to mind. Whatever you want.
Sure.
So, no word in the English language rhymes with month, orange, silver, or purple.
Okay. There is a word called kerple. Ask any horse people. They will tell you what a kerple is. It's the rear end of the horse and specifically the strap that goes around the back, the hindquarters. It's called a kerple. Curple.
So there's that. And if
Right.
there's one, there might be others, right?
There are. You said orange.
I said orange.
There is a place in Wales called Gorange.
How about month?
One of the holy texts in Hinduism, and I know this is maybe not the English language, is the Grunth.
Okay.
So that may not necessarily be English,
But there's still something out there.
There's still something out there.
How about silver?
Silver?
And I think that wouldn't Wilbur match?
Yeah, I think it would do okay for a limerick.
Silver, Wilbur?
Yeah, I think it would do okay in a limerick or a poetry or a song lyric. But whether, language experts would agree that it actually rhymes, I think it's close enough, personally.
Yeah, I mean, come on,
Yeah.
But then again, try using that in a creative way. I guess it's possible, but who
Yeah.
would want to? So that's one. Let's move on. Let's see. Okay. I'm going to throw this at you, and you're partial to English language and that. I'm going to throw this at you, see if you know the answer to this one.
Okay.
Okay. What is the shortest complete sentence in the English language?
The shortest complete sentence.
In the English language.
It would have to be a one word, so there's a couple. Yes. No.
You're on the thing. It said go, but
Go?
you're on the yeah.
Okay. Yeah, the first one that popped into my brain is two words, but so you have subject and predicate there. It would have to be I do, or I will, or I won't. But you're talking about, now we're getting longer letters, letter counts there.
But that would be a sentence. If you end it with a period, that's a sentence, and you're there.
Yeah. So go being, okay.
2 letters.
Yeah. It's a verb. Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. All right.
You could accept that one.
Yep.
That one was a fun one. It's good that you went there and we're we're pretty much dead on with the whole thing. Let's see. So I'll just say this one because it's kind of worded pretty long here. The phrase "rule of thumb."
Mm-hmm.
Actually, no. We'll ask you the question. What is the phrase "rule of thumb" derived from?
I have no clue. I've probably heard this over the years, but I don't remember it.
Oh, man.
But I really dig this kind of thing. I really do.
Okay, you ready for the answer for this one?
Yeah, sure. Go for it.
It was derived, the phrase "rule of thumb," from the Old English law, which stated that you could not hit your wife with anything wider than your thumb.
I don't see how that protected anybody, but okay.
That's what it said. So what was it, like a switch?
Yeah. It seems to me that the thinner it is, the more it would sting. And
well, no, just imagine how big. I mean, if there's no rule of thumb, they could take a brick, I mean, or something that's savage, and then maim the person.
Well, it's all pretty savage, but I just, that's why I'm saying I don't think that protects anybody. Okay,
Yeah,
I don't understand all that anyway, but yeah, okay.
That's where the word apparently, or the phrase, I'm sorry, rule of thumb is derived from. That I guess that's an interesting. I didn't know that till I just read that right now.
Yeah, I've never heard that before either. I probably had heard that years ago and forgot it, but because I've heard a lot of these things, but that one just didn't stick with me for some reason. Maybe because I don't like the subject matter, but I don't know.
So, are you ready for another?
Yeah, hit me with them. Hit me with them. I like this kind of thing.
So here's another one. Where does the term, and these cross away from necessary? It's English language, but it's also like it's a broad landscape of things. So sure. I'm just going to hit you with this one. So where does the term "the whole 9 yards" come from?
Okay, I've heard 2 stories on this. I've heard 2 stories. One of them was the length of the belt in a machine gun in the earlier fighter planes, so that when you gave somebody the whole 9 yards, you just basically emptied your gun.
Okay, are you ready to see if that's accurate?
Or the other one was that was something to do with an anchor chain. So the whole 9 yards basically meant you were panicking to stop a boat.
Okay.
Kind of throwing the anchor out there and letting it freewheel until it hit something and stopped you.
All right. So are you ready for what we have here in front of us?
Okay.
The term "the whole 9 yards" came from a World War II fighter pilot, or from World War II fighter pilots in the South Pacific when arming their airplanes on the ground. the 50 caliber machine gun ammo belts measured exactly 27 feet before being loaded into the fuselage. If the pilots fired all their ammo at a target, it got the whole 9 yards. And
So that was the first
Lindsay
one, yeah.
and Lindsay nailed it, nailed it, nailed it. He
Okay.
did.
Okay. Yeah, all right. Even a broken clock is right once a day.
That was pretty darn impressive, dude. I mean, I knew because I had the thing in front of me as you were explaining it, but very good, dude.
And I know somebody's going to correct me and say a broken clock is right twice a day, not a digital. Go ahead.
All right. Okay, we're gonna go here.
Okay.
All right. Where or what is this is kind of a difficult one. What is the word testify? Where is that? What is that based? Where does that originate?
Root word would probably be test. Now, when it comes to etymology, I'm not 100% on that. I don't know. I don't know. Probably something to do with a test.
You're gonna be surprised.
Okay.
Actually, I think everybody's gonna be surprised. I mean, unless you know this information. So here's the thing, and remember, the word is testify, and you did remove the IFY and said it derives from test, right?
Yeah. Well, that was a guess. Because
Okay. I would say that that's reasonable for you to do that. Like I look at words and I'll do that too. I'm not anywhere near an English expert, but I do that with words and stuff, knowing the English and Spanish similarities, and the roots coming from Latin. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You could see a lot of similarities, although the two are different. So here's the answer.
Okay.
The word testify is based on the ancient Roman practice of making men swear on their testicles when making a statement in court. Holy smokes.
Well, that just kind of, I could. There's about 75 different crude jokes that just popped into my brain, and I can get away with one of them. Probably, I was going to ask you if that's where the term "hung jury" came from, but I don't know if I should go there or not. We'll edit this part out.
No, there's nothing wrong with that. It's funny within the context. It's not like, oh boy, Mark, you're going to hell for that one.
Yeah.
Yep. So, okay. So here's one. In English, in the 1880s, or I'm sorry, forgive me, my vision. In England, in the 1880s, the word pants was considered a dirty word.
Yep. Pants,
you knew that.
Still to this day, is British slang for underwear. So they still use the phrase trousers, and when they say trousers, they mean trousers. And, they will use the word jeans, but to them, pants are underwear. So it was seen as rude.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
But all those other words that we hear them say when we talk with Jamie Page, now that's all okay, right?
Well, it just depends on what it is. But yeah, the slang system over there is different from ours. I mean, they got their words for these things. We have our words for other things. We say underwear, underdrawers, whatever. They say pants.
Is it true? So I've heard this before. Is it true that in Australia, a thumbs up is like giving the middle finger or like a rude thing? Is that a
I've never heard that.
I've heard that the thumbs up is not nice. I've heard that. It's the equivalent of like the middle finger.
I don't know about that. I know over in the UK, they do the middle finger thing, but they also do the two fingers showing the back of the palm, which basically means the same thing.
Oh, I see.
You know.
Well, I do know that in Roman time, or I've heard this, and I can't, but that the whole thing with the in the arena
Uh-huh.
or coliseums where they would do the thumbs up for let them live, or thumbs down for let them die or kill them, is actually inverse. Like a thumbs down is good. Man, I just twisted my arm in that position. Try doing this thumbs down. I have issues with this arm, and I tried to do that. I just realized that I've got pain there. It's not easy getting. It's not
Now,
easy
see,
getting old.
I heard it was completely different. I heard that the closed fist with the thumb hidden was let him live, and the thumb out in any direction, doesn't matter what it was nope, off with his head.
Oh, interesting.
I heard that. So I don't know which is correct, but
Well, that
but
deserves investigation.
but I had heard that the thumbs up versus thumbs down was done basically for Hollywood.
Oh, it's
So
more dramatic, right?
yeah, yeah, because we make that association: thumbs down bad, thumbs up good. We make that association, but something simple and goofy like that. You go to, and I found this out when I lived in Germany. You go to Germany, we start counting. We start with our index finger, 1, 2, 3, 4. They start with their thumb, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4.
Oh, that's right. We go one, two,
So,
3, 4, and
uh-huh,
then we go 5, which actually doesn't make sense if
right.
you think about it. It should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
And that's the way they count it. Yeah, exactly.
We do that. I just, I feel like a little kid because
It's
we
just
go,
little goofy things like that, you know.
who,
And we've talked about this before over
not
there.
this one.
Most places in Europe, something as simple and stupid as putting your hands on the table. Over here, putting your hands on the dinner table, your elbow, or doing whatever, that's considered rude. Over in
Rude.
Europe, putting your hands under the table is considered rude. And that goes back to the old days when it was the warrior tribes and what have you. It's like, what are you hiding under there? You're reaching for a weapon. You've got something to hide. You kept your hands up in plain sight on the table to prove you were trustworthy.
I'm going to be honest with you. Over here, that's how I was taught as well,
Mhm.
is that your food sits there and your hands to your sides and you pick up the fork. You're not leaning up on the table, crouched up over the
No,
table,
no,
hugging it. It's considered rude,
right.
which is what we just went through in the conversation. But I'll be honest with you, it is quite at a diner or whatever comfortable to lean these
Yep.
forearms up against the edge, just
And
slightly.
that's what most of them do over there. That's what the way most people eat. They tuck in the elbows tight against their sides, put their forearms against the edge of the table and eat. And not so much hug the plate, but kind of. And it's knife and fork. Fork in the right hand, knife in the left hand, tines pointed down. You stab, cut. They don't cut up a whole steak and then eat the pieces. They'll
Right.
take a slice off of it, then eat that, then take the next slice off of it and eat that.
Well, I'm sure they're so civilized enough to understand that when you're done with your plate, you take the plate and you just ever so tilt it, and
No, you don't do that.
you lick from the bottom of the plate all the way to the top, and then
And
you take your tie,
uh-huh.
you lift up your
Clean it off, hold it under the table, let the dog have it.
you take you walk out the door a hot mess, and that's what we call civilized.
Yeah.
My father was a stickler for all that stuff, man. I'll just tell you right now, growing up, like sit like this, sit like that, okay, eat, and it's not like he'd keep going about it, but like he would give me instructions at random moments,
Yeah.
and it's like, dude, I'm trying to enjoy. And my grandfather, being that he was born in Spain, he ate different than the rest of all of us.
Uh-huh.
He would, I think I've told you this, but he'd be the first one to sit at the table with nobody at the table.
Uh-huh.
And he'd just sit there quite comfortably calm. There's nobody at the table. And I'd run over and I'd sit next to him and say, why are you sitting here? Why are you this? Why are you that? And he says, I'm just sitting. And then they'd bring the food. My dad was still out, whatever he was doing, my mom and this and that. Grandma was serving. he wouldn't touch his food. He wouldn't do anything. And then you'd see my dad come in, my mom, my grandma. He would not eat until everybody was seated.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, my dad, no, he'd come in, he'd sit down, and he'd hunker down, you
Yeah.
know, but he would not do that. And it's just how they were brought
It's
up,
the
I
old
guess.
days. Yeah. Yeah. That when it's dinner time, you assemble at the table, but you don't eat till everybody's there. Yeah.
But if I were to have ever done the Thai thing, my dad
Oh,
would
God,
have killed
yes.
me.
My mother, there were certain things that you didn't do downtown at a restaurant or something like that. God forbid you ever ordered ribs, because I mean, you'd take them up, pick up a bun. My mother would lean across the table, look at me, get that look on her face. You have a fork and knife. Mom, it's ribs.
That's
You
right.
have a fork and knife.
No, but I'm with you on that, man.
You know, I don't know what she was afraid that somebody was going to come in while I had barbecue sauce around one eyebrow and chowing down and take a picture, you know, and I'd be on the front page, summer's here, barbecue season, you know. I don't know what she was afraid of, because the whole restaurant, everybody eating ribs was like, nah, 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 you know, and I'm like, well, what about chicken and pizza and stuff like that? Okay. Okay.
If you think about Western society
Uh-huh.
and you think about Eastern society, particularly like, let's say, Japan. So we're very uptight and sort of uniform, even though there's degrees of severity in that depending on culturally. But very, when you're sitting at the table, you're quite controlled and this and that. Whereas and like, let's say we have to retain our burping, we have to retain our this. While back in Japan, if you don't burp, they consider you, well, dude, come on. Did you not like the burp? Let it all out, man.
Yeah.
And it sounds disgusting, but it sounds liberating at the same time.
I don't know about liberating, but it's just a little bit more, I don't know, realistic maybe, because everybody does it. You're absolutely right. But then again, everybody does a lot of things that you wouldn't, you know, even they would find unacceptable at the table.
Right. But
you know, I don't know. It's just different culture, different mores.
Okay, but imagine us sitting. You have to get up, go to the bathroom or outside, and the awkwardness of you're sitting at a table. Let's say the most benign thing out of all of the human, let's say a burp, right? In Western, particularly American society and Western, you know, burping at the dinner table, is like unacceptable, rude. You're gonna
everybody knows that we do it, and if you kind of try to, you know, muffle it a little bit, folks understand. It's when you make that loud announcement, like, you know, you want the people in the next restaurant over to hear it. That's, you know, come on.
Well, I'm saying that we have to actually, if the offending sound is going to be so violent, because sometimes you got to burp because those Coca-Cola soda, you know, you're ready to do it. So you have to get up and make some excuse, you know, like, oh, excuse me for one moment, you know. You can't tell them, excuse me for, here's another problem. You can't say to the people, like, let's say it's not even burping. Let's say you have to go to excuse me, I need to go to the laboratory, or I need to go to the restroom, or whatever you want to say. But all of a sudden you're injecting. This is the uncomfortable thing. You're injecting a particular that you're going through at the moment while people are sitting eating that you don't want to share with them. You want to freely be able to get up, and some people do, but we have to go find a place, burp, do whatever, and then come back. And it's just such an awkward. Meanwhile, in Asiatic countries, particularly Japan, you just burp it out, man, and they cheer you.
But we also tend to, that's something with American culture especially, we find the need to explain things. You know, you're talking about excusing yourself for the table. I just say, excuse me, I'll be right back. I don't tell them where I'm going, what I'm doing. I don't figure it's anybody's business but mine.
Oh, if I were there, I would say, excuse me, Mark, before you go from this dinner table, would you please like to tell the crowd?
As soon as I get back, and I'll go. You know.
Could you please explain to the crowd why you're getting up?
Yeah, it's called none ya.
Of your business?
None your damn business. Exactly. You know. or you know, the classic, what are you writing a book? Skip this chapter, call it a mystery. Some things, I don't want to know what you're doing. I don't care what you're doing. You don't owe me an explanation.
Well, you see, but
You want me to get up from the table? Go.
no, okay, fine. I'll give you that. Now, Mark is coming back from his journey, which is mysterious to all, and people are eating. But while they're eating, they're like, boy, I wonder what's taking Mark so long. Yeah, where did he go? You know, it creates that whole. All I'm saying is the freedom of like the Japanese. Not that I want to move over there by any time. It's just the allotment of an easy burp is not such a bad thing. I think that is something that we could embrace.
We're believe it or not, we're seen around the world. We like to think of ourselves as independent. Excuse me. We're talking about burping and what I do.
Did you just burp live on air?
Yes, I did, and I muffled it and said, "Excuse me."
Well, you did. That's true. Continue. You said
it happened, but we are seen around the world as rather prudish, and we like to think of ourselves as liberated and freewheeling, but we're seen as actually pretty prudish. You know,
mentioned that before when we've had conversations and stuff.
Right. Well, like the little phrase tidbit. We are the only country where they pronounce it TID. Because it's a dirty word.
To say titbit?
Uh-huh.
It doesn't even
sound right. That is the actual phrase. There are birds with that name, but we won't say it here. You know? And it's just like, come on, what are you, 4? You know? It's not a dirty word. Go ahead, say it. But we don't do it.
That's very interesting. Well, remember also the people that originally, and I guess that's not even an excuse, but there is some effect from that. The main timeline of like the Pilgrims, they were kind of a little bit on the extreme side of like aligning themselves with the even leveled, you know, narrow walk.
But even they would use that word for the name of a bird. Or when they were talking about a minuscule amount, because it didn't mean what we associate it with.
Right.
You know, we're the ones that added that connotation to it. So that means we have to wipe out the word because it's just not acceptable. You don't say that in polite company. But we're seen as prudish for a lot more than that, believe me. Yeah. You know, covering up the body and this, that, and the other, which, you know, okay, fine. I do believe in certain social standards. I mean, I have 3 daughters. You know, I was fairly strict when it came to that kind of thing. I didn't want to see any bare midriffs or anything like that. But, you know, I'm a protective dad.
Well, yeah, I mean.
But, you know, a lot of we go out of our way to avoid offending way, way, way too often, especially where there's absolutely nothing offensive about it. You know, there's, I think intent shows more than anything else. And that's just my opinion. But we are seen around the world as being rather prudish about things like that. We were just talking a minute ago, and, you know, welcome to Scratched Light. We were just talking about passing gas a few minutes ago.
Oh, yeah.
That was not even referenced on television until
Alka-Seltzer.
Relatively recently. But it's everywhere else in the world, you know, in movies, on TV, or what have you like that. They will make jokes about it. We won't. You know, I don't know if we think we're too mature, and it's not like I'm pining for the old, you know, 4th grade days of toilet humor or anything like that. I'm not. I just think we could stand a little bit of lightening up and realize that, you know, some things just don't mean anything.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, in a social setting, somebody does that, people at their best behavior, or I'm sorry, people at their worst behavior are kind enough to excuse by not, you know, putting too much attention into the offending guy that's burping down. So, you know, society has a way of sweeping it, under the rug when
Yeah.
there's these outliers.
It's polite to not acknowledge it happened,
Yeah.
And, lighten up. Things happen.
Can you
We're
be-
all
can
just,
you believe so and so earlier today at the dinner and family function? He just belted out like, can you believe that? I mean,
yeah.
he's
It's
so
like,
rude.
grow up, number one. And number two, who cares? Just who cares? So I don't know. But this kind of leads me towards another subject, and it's one of those things that is just a little pet peeve of mine, and that is we goof up and mess up and tear up phrases, common phrases,
Mhm.
because we don't understand them, don't know where they came from, or whatever. I actually heard somebody say, you've heard the phrase, of course, from the get-go.
Yeah.
I've actually heard people say from the gecko, like the lizard.
Yeah. But it's from the get-go.
Yeah. I don't know where it came from. I don't know the meaning behind it, but it means from the beginning,
Yeah.
not from the lizard.
Well, you can see from the get, is like get and
Uh-huh.
and
Go.
go. Yeah.
Yeah. Or all intensive purposes. Not intensive. Intense, as in intending to do something.
Intentions, yeah.
Intense and purposes.
That's
It's not
right.
intensive purposes. I'll put it to you this way. It got so bad, Eloy, that when we first started doing Trampled, and I was real excited, number one, to be asked to do a podcast. Number two, to actually do one. And we were talking about this, that, and the other. And I signed up for a Spreaker account. And folks, Spreaker.com. It's a lot of fun. Some cool podcasts out there, including this one. I thought about starting my own podcast on just that. Little things like that that really just bug the stuffings out of me for no apparent reason whatsoever. But if you join Spreaker, just make an account. You get a free 15-minute podcast
Of your own. That's
of your
right.
own daily. You can, and you can stream, 30 times a day if you want, but at 15-minute intervals. And it's free. Just sign up and you can do a podcast and host it on Spreaker.
Yeah.
And I really honestly thought about doing a little 15-minute, here's what pisses off Mark today.
I like that idea,
I never followed through with it, but I was really tempted.
Well, we could add a segment here.
Now, nobody wants to hear me rant about stuff like that.
It's
consequential.
You might be surprised, man. I mean, it's all about, that's one thing I've been trying to get. I guess that's one thing that we do anyhow. But it's all about, to me, it makes sense that it is. I don't have the final word on anything, really. It's just my perspective. But I think that there's strong evidence to suggest that this whole human experience is all about tales and stories. Of humans in all sorts of different predicaments and situations, and I think that's a glue that we all have, and so that's why this is worth doing. The other podcast and our videos and our connections with each other are the things that we. So I think that it's totally valid, man.
I don't know. I would have to go in and research a word or a phrase and figure out where it came from. But
so from the get-go.
From the get-go, yes, from the get-go.
And from prior intense, what was the other one that you said?
For intensive purposes.
For intensive purposes?
And it's a weird one. I've heard and I've read, like on Twitter and what have you, bowl in a china shop.
Okay.
BOWL.
You mean like bowling?
No, a bowl in a china shop.
I understand. Right, I understand. So what's the issue with that?
That's not the phrase.
Okay, what's the phrase? Because I never use that.
The phrase is a bull in a china shop.
Oh, like a bull
in a china shop. Something that potentially is going to cause a huge amounts of destruction. But people have changed the meaning around to be something that's very, very fragile. So
Okay.
they changed the meaning of the phrase by changing one word, not knowing that they were changing the meaning of the phrase.
But wait, let's get this clear though. The original is a bull in a china shop, so
Right.
that's a devastating thing. But are you telling me that now the standard it changed from that to a bull in a china?
In a lot of places it has, and in a lot of people's minds it has.
Ah, I see. That's
To
an
where
interesting.
they've heard a bull in a china shop, and maybe they heard it, pronounced a little bit weird, and they
Mhm.
said, okay, a bull in a china shop, that must mean something that's really fragile.
Another thing is that people do in conversation is that they'll hear like so you'll hear an extreme amount of words and phrases that
Mhm.
reference things that you hear but you don't apply. um I'm not saying anybody, right? I'm just saying people that they might not apply in a day-to-day basis. So there's certain words that one um knows about and they don't share, and by not sharing they don't have the practice. But the people that capture something like that and start
Uh-huh.
spewing it slightly different, they propagate this whole devastated landscape of words and meanings that we now exist in. But
Right.
it's good to push oneself and use words that, like the bull in a china shop. I like that. I've heard it. I
Uh-huh.
never used it. Never used it. But I'm gonna start using it when I can to feed it in there.
Yeah, some of it is just goofy stuff. I mean, inconsequential things. And the main reason I didn't go ahead and start doing a podcast was because I didn't know if there was enough material out there to keep it going. You know, and I that's something I don't like to do. I don't like to start something that I don't know can be perpetuated like that in serial form. Uh,
Yeah.
it's just, is there enough material out there? There's another one that comes to mind. Have you heard the phrase, "Oh, I'm on tender hooks"?
Mm, it sounds reasonable right off the bat. Without, I probably have, but it's not something that I come across. So
Yeah.
I would leave it on the not really.
Well, the phrase is actually on tenter hooks, and a
Okay.
tenter hook it's a hook
For
that
the
goes
pig.
onto a frame
Oh,
that's used by people making like woolen fabric. It's
okay.
for stretching and blocking fabric.
Oh,
And for some reason it became, to say I'm on tenter hooks became a euphemism for I'm real anxious or full of anxiety over something.
okay. Okay.
I'm on tenter hooks.
Yeah.
We don't know what a tenter is or who a tenter is.
So we turned it in.
So we say tender hooks. And it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. What
It
the
doesn't.
devil is a tender hook?
It doesn't make sense at all. But I've never used that phrase.
Yeah.
But so we're on tender.
It's pretty arcane. It's not something that you use every day, but it's goofy how language changes and how we morph things. My first exposure to this was where I heard about these women who were out protesting for women's suffrage.
Okay.
And I thought, well, why the hell would women be in favor of suffering? I didn't realize that what they meant was suffrage, not suffering,
Yeah.
suffrage in the right to vote,
Yeah.
the right to that franchise. So I didn't know that that's what that word meant. I just made the mental link in my brain with suffering. So why would women be for that? How could you do that?
Yeah.
So that was my first exposure to not understanding what the phrase actually meant, not knowing where it came from. And
It's
I thought, well, there's more out there like that. And sure enough, there's plenty.
it,
And
it sounds it sounds to me by the so yes, the right to vote by women, the suffragette movement, which started in England, I think, right?
well, it started all over the place at about the same time,
Hmm.
really. Back in the 1800s, really, it is
Well,
when it started.
what I wanted to get at is that the word suffrage,
Uh-huh.
it it the suffer part of it, it doesn't sound outlandish. Um, to so it's coming of age where one has the privileges and rights of adulthood, and that encompasses. It's kind of like I could see a connection there without like looking at it. I can see a connection there um, with the term suffer and
Right.
suffrage in that respect, where it's the coming of age, where one has attained rights to function in the society and all the burdens that it comes with, and so on and so. So I can sort of see a possibility. I don't know if it's correct, but I could see sort of like a connection there.
Well, they're two different words from two different sources. They just happen to sound similar.
Similar.
And similar enough to where they'd be easily confused, especially from somebody who was like 5 or 6, like I was. You know, they're two different. But we do that. English language does that all the time. We have one word for the animal and one word for the product that they have. You know, that's why you have cow and you have beef. That's why you have pig and you have pork.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. It's just one is on your plate, the other's outside in the yard, you know.
Yeah.
But we don't do that with chicken. We have chicken no matter where it is.
Poor guys, they don't get a secondary name.
No. You know, bacon is not a career, but you know, that was one of them things that I picked up. You know, is because I heard on the radio years ago hog futures, and I'm like, hogs don't have futures. You know, so it's just weird, you know. And I never understood guerrilla fighters. You
right.
Know?
Yeah.
You know, or urban gorillas. I'm thinking of urban, you know, gorillas mowing the yard, you know, pushing a mower, you know, walking down to the mailbox, you know, stuff like that. You know, hi Fred, how you doing? You know?
Yeah, there's a lot of, you know, and English is it's an incredible thing, and all the Germanic languages and stuff. It's an incredible thing. There's quite a difference between the Romantic, you know, languages like Spanish and whatnot, but they all share Latin roots. You know, there's certain words that go throughout, you know, the whole of languages, because Rome was such a influential thing. I mean, just, you know, it everywhere. So you hear a lot of words like that one, I can't think of any that come to mind at the moment.
But when you start breaking down English, you start seeing where the words came from. We got a lot from Latin. We got a lot from German. We got the Germanic languages. We got a lot from French. We took, you know, a good portion of our vocabulary comes from other languages.
Yeah.
So, you know, and it's always evolving. It's always changing. And one of the odd things about English that isn't true of other languages is common usage more or less dictates the true correct meaning of the word. You know, if you get into Spanish, the word for, oh, good grief, the word for singing, just
Cantar.
for lack of a better term, right? That's all it means. That's it's you know.
No, you could use it in reference to, like, you know how like the Italian mob here in America, like in the movies, they'll say we're gonna make that little bird sing. Like they can use it in that sort of
sure,
like,
in a slang context.
Yeah,
but that's not it. But it doesn't change its meaning away from the word singing.
I see. But in our case,
but in our case, we do that with a lot of words. You know, singing was a bad example. It's just the only thing that popped into my brain at the time.
Right.
But we have done that with a lot of other words. We have taken them away from their original meaning, and they now mean something else completely different. You know, sometimes the opposite of what their intent was, and other times not. But we tend to make up our stories. And the thing about it is, though, what I was getting at was, especially with American English, we find that perfectly acceptable. We let it happen. We don't necessarily encourage it, but we don't discourage it either. So, you know, if a word changes its meaning over the years, we don't really do anything about it. It's okay. It's acceptable. Because common usage ends up being the final arbiter.
So let me throw something at you as we're nearing, you know, the end here. I want to throw something at you because I've not delved into this, but I've heard it on the internet a lot. And there's a new word for, like, with this whole like gender thing and all these things. And I hate to go there, But there's a word where they call males cis males. Have you heard all that whole thing?
No, I haven't.
They're
I'm in a pretty isolated area, but go ahead.
No, well, on the internet, which is available to all of us. I've come across new words that are being treated and this is neither here nor there, but just since we're talking language, and I've started to notice words entering the common sort of vernacular with like as if it popped out of nowhere, and I'm like, there's words being added now that are becoming popular that one has no idea, but I guess that's as far as we can take that.
But we do that. We do that with this language all the time, and that's another part of what I mean about common usage as the final arbiter. For instance, we were talking earlier about microwave ovens.
Yeah,
that phrase didn't exist before. Whenever it was they started going on the public market. They did in scientific circles. Maybe they didn't necessarily call it a microwave oven, but they knew what the concept was. You think of something simple like a personal computer. Well, we would have never thought about something like that in the 60s or 70s. So smartphone, cell phone, words come all the time.
Yeah, you're right.
They're introduced to the language, we accept them, we start using them. We use ATM machines all the time, even though ATM stands for automated teller machine. So we call it an automated teller machine. But that's neither here nor there. That's a small one. I'll get off of that. That's okay. But we change word meanings. We add words. George Carlin did a fabulous bit on the condition that soldiers go through in combat, that years ago, World War I was called shell shock. Yeah. And he follows its metamorphosis all the way up to post-traumatic stress disorder. It's a fabulous bit. It's got its funny parts, but it's very serious. And it's 100% true. It's not so much a rail against political correctness as it is a rail against overcomplication and being afraid to say what it really is. And he winds up the thing. This happened not long after the Vietnam War. He recorded this bit, but he ends it by saying, I'll bet you if they were still calling it shell shock, a lot of these non-vets, when they came home, would have gotten the care they really needed.
Interesting, yeah.
Because you remove all of the emotion and just bury everything in jargon.
Yeah, there's something to be said about just keep it simple, stupid, right?
Yeah, simple, direct language, and it's an excellent bit. It's on YouTube. All you got to do is just look for it.
As a final bit, how that I just mentioned now, keep it simple, stupid. That comes from somewhere. I don't even know where it came from, and I use it all the time. But you've heard it before.
Oh yeah, it's all over the place.
Right.
That's it's in song lyrics. It's all over the place.
Right, but it's got an origin. We use it all the time. Where the heck did it come from? I guess we can talk more about that. I think this has been a very productive, interesting, entertaining. How do you feel about it?
Welcome to Word Chat. Our lines are open. I like this kind of stuff. I really do. I don't know. I'm a word nerd, I guess you'd say. Sometimes where little bits and words and phrases come from to me is it's real interesting.
Yeah.
And I could not tell you why, because to most folks it would be one of the most boring things in the world. But we communicate in language, so understanding a little bit about the language, I think, helps folks communicate, so long as everybody knows what the word means.
All right. Well, folks, we thank you for hanging out with us for this short little while, and I hope it's entertaining. If you want to check out our previous episodes, which are incredibly fun and interesting because we go into just a large number of different topics, a lot of good times that we've had. Just go to trampledunderfootpodcast.com. You can subscribe here to our channel on YouTube, but go to trampledunderfootpodcast.com and check out our past episodes via the Wayback Machine button, and also leave us some feedback. Check out our Facebook. Just search us out, leave us some feedback, and let us know what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong. If there's any curiosities and questions or ideas for upcoming shows, you're more than welcome to do so. We're happily willing to entertain those ideas.
You betcha. Send us some ideas. Is there something that we got right, something we got wrong? Is there something you'd like to hear us talk about? Is there something you'd like to hear our take on? Maybe you wonder what we think about something. So don't be a bull in the china shop. Come bowl with us.
Good night, guys.
Good night.